Hello everybody, and welcome to another Lens Studio tutorial. In this video we're going to learn how to make the sunrise face lens, which if you want to check out the preview here, once you tap on the screen, mount and start moving down, kind of like a parallax style effect with your face inside the sun, and then when you tap it, it goes right back to normal. Okay, so let's just start off with a new project here. And we're going to import all of those images that are in the lens. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start adding all of these images to the scene as a billboard. And a billboard is a 2D sprite image that is aligned to the orthographic camera in a 2D view. So this makes it much easier to edit your sizing and everything on the orthographic camera. So we're going to name this one Sky, because this will be the very back of the lens. And we're going to input that sky here, and you'll see it doesn't really look correct here because it's supposed to be a really long gradient. So we're going to hit the stretch fill mode so that it'll cover the entire screen, and then we're going to stretch this out a bunch here. Just enough so that you really can't see the light part. Okay, there we go, perfect. Alright, so now we're going to make another billboard for all of the other stuff. Okay. So now we have all of the billboards inside this lens, but they don't do anything yet. So in order to make them move, what we're going to use is a very useful thing that Lens Studio provides, and that's called tweening. And that allows you to animate objects really easily without having to create complex animations in 3D or 2D software. And you can just do it all within Lens Studio. And they make it very simple to do. So we're going to use the Tween Manager here in the scripting menu. And you're going to want to make sure that the Tween Manager is always at the top of the scene. And then we have all these example objects in here that we're just going to delete because we're going to be making our own tweens. And then we're going to do the same in here, delete the resources that say remove me. Okay, so now we're going to start creating our tweens that will move everything down. So to do that, we're just going to put it all inside the Tween Manager just to organize it properly. So we are going to add an empty child object so that it is put under the Tween Manager. And we're just going to call this one Tweens. This is going to be where we put all of the tweens in here that will move everything. So, we're going to go into our tween menu here, tween types, and there's one right here for tween billboard, which is exactly what we're working with. So, let's just take those tweens. You can either add the component down here by clicking add component and script, and then you click add script and find that tween billboard. Or what you can do is just simply, when you have that object selected, inside the inspector you just drag that script. There you go. So now we have the tween billboard script, and now we're going to use this to start animating stuff. And you can see here there's a bunch of different things that we'll need to look at. So we have the scene object, and that is what we specify as the thing that we're moving. So let's start off with the first mountain. So we're going to do this mountain right here. Actually, it's this one. Okay. And you saw it kind of moved there initially because right now all the values are set to 0. So we're going to need to go in here and find what that initial value was. So if you look down in the aligner, it tells you what the X and the Y binding points are. So that's what we're going to need to copy into the tween as the start value. So the X value was 0.428, and then you see it kind of moves back to 0 there, and then the Y value was negative 0.2784. Okay, so now it kind of still does this weird thing where it moves there automatically, and that's okay. We're just going to be using this to play around. So we're going to want to keep the X value the same. Oops. We're going to want to keep the X value the same the entire time. And then what we're going to need to do is have it move down. So we're going to want to put this at, let's say, negative 1.2. Okay, so it doesn't go completely off screen, so let's do it a little bit more, negative 2. Still not enough, negative 3 should do it. There we go, but it's going pretty fast, so let's make it go a little bit slower by adjusting the time here. So let's put 3 in there and see. That's still a little bit fast. Let's go with 5. There we go. That's a nice animation. So now we have this moving the way that we want it to, just down off the screen. And let's name this Mountain 1. Ooh, 1. There we go. Okay, so we have our first tween made. So now let's go and do a different one. Let's just add another tween billboard in there. And let's do Mountain 2. I'm going to name that again. And you'll see why I'm naming them in a little bit. Because we're going to be doing a little bit of scripting with this later to make the animations happen exactly when we want them to. So let's go back to this mountain here and check on what these values were. So the value is still at 0 for x. It's just this negative 0.47 that we need to copy over. Okay. Then we're going to do negative 3 again. Oh, but that goes way too quickly, so let's go back and do 5. And it's also going at the same time as that. So what we want to do is have it go after that one's down a little bit. So let's have it delay 1.5 seconds. There we go. So now it's going down just a little bit after that. And now we're going to be doing the same thing for all of these images. And we'll just fast forward through that so you don't have to see everything. There we go. That looks perfect. Okay, so now all of these tweens are running automatically, and we want them to run when we tap the screen. So we're going to need to make a little script for this in order to make it happen. And what we're going to do here is just add a new script. Looks like that went inside the tween menu. Okay, we're just going to call this Sun Controller. Then we're going to add this as a new empty object. And name that the same thing. Drag that in here. So what we're going to need to do is import the tween object, because we're going to need to reference that in order to start and reset the tweens. So we're going to do input scene object, and I'm going to call it tweens. Once you apply the changes, this input statement right here is how you specify what you want to put in your script to reference. So once you apply this and you click on the scene object, you'll see here that we have the tweens object that we need to specify. And because I wrote in the script scene object, that is what it's asking for. If I added a component instead, like let's say I was just going to be using the sprite visual, this is how it would look, component.spriteVisual, and it is case sensitive, so you have to make sure that the S and the V are capitalized. And then we'll apply that. You'll see here, oops, I spelled it wrong. No, here we go. Okay, so if you spell it correctly, it will show up here, and now it's asking for a sprite instead of just a scene object. So let's just go right back to the scene object, because that's the one that we're going to need. Let's add that in here. So now we have all of our tweens available to be referenced in this script. And now we can start building the script. So we want these tweens to happen when you tap on the screen. So what we're going to need to do is create a tap event. And in order to do that, what we can do is we can go into the Lens Studio website, and all you have to do is search tap event. And it'll be the first one that shows up here. We're going to scroll down, and it gives us a nice example of how to create a tap event. So if we just copy and paste that in here and just apply it, and let's just tap here, it'll tell you right here in the logger what the position of your tap is, which is a really useful thing if you need to do specific locations. But we're not going to need that for this lens, so we're just going to delete everything inside the function on tapped. This is everything that'll happen whenever you tap the screen. So now we can do what we want to when it's tapped. But before we call these tweens, we want to make sure that every single one of them has played automatically unchecked. Because if we want to reference them in the script, we have to make sure that they don't play automatically. So let's go in here. Now everything should just be static until we tell it otherwise. So we need to start these tweens. So there's a couple ways that we could do this, and again, we're going to go to the Lens Studio site and we're going to search tweening. So let's go down here to tween start, to start tween here. So these are the examples of how you call a tween in the script to start it. And this is the line that we need right here. This is the command that starts the tween. So I'm going to copy that and put it in here. So this will start an individual tween, and all you need to change in here is script.object with tweens to whatever you named your object. So it's script.tweens. That is what this is right here. And then this is why we were naming the tweens, because this is where we need to call all of the tween names. So let's say we want to move the first mountain. Let's just type mountain. So now we have it so that if we tap it, oh, you know what? It's mountain 1, not just mountain. So now, if we tap it, that single tween will move. So now we have that, but what we want to do is have them all move together. So instead of just calling every single individual tween, what we're going to do in here is we're going to create another empty child object under the tween manager, and we're going to call this chain. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a tween chain to this right here. And what that does is it chains all the tweens together by name, and then it's going to basically save us some time in the scripting. So you want to make sure that the play automatically is unchecked again, and we're just going to call this tween chain. And then in here, this object is going to be the tween object. That's where all of our stuff is housed. So that's where it's going to reference the tween names that we list here. So just to give us an idea of everything, mountain 1, okay. So let's add all of our tween names in here. Okay, so now we have all of our tweens in here named. So we have every single tween that we need to work. And what we want to do is make sure that all at once is checked, because we already specified the delay values that we need. So they essentially will all be playing at once with the delays that we specified. Okay, so now if we play automatically, let's just test it out and see that it works the way that we want it to. Okay, cool. So now we have all of those tweens exactly how we want it to. And at this point, I'm going to start adding the face insets. So let's start by going to add new, face effects, and then face inset. Okay, so let's go in here. Because we're going to be moving the face inset around, we don't need it to be bound to the head. We don't need it to move when the head moves. So let's take it off of that and let's put it inside the orthographic camera, and then we can just delete this. And then you're going to also want to make sure that it's on the same layer. You can see that these all have this green circle and this is a blue, and this green circle means it's an orthographic layer, so we need to adjust it so that it's on that same layer. And then you just want to make sure that your values are all zeroed out once you move it, because they can kind of get messed up once you move them outside of their parent object. So now we have it here right at the center of the screen, and we're going to want to adjust it so that it's at the end value of where the sun will be. So let's just disable all of these temporarily until we just see the sun in the sky. So let's take both of these suns and move them to what their end values will be in the tweens that we created. So if we look here, the end Y value will be 0.5. So let's go and highlight both of these and then just make the Y value of the binding point 0.5. Okay, so now they're where they will be at the very end. And we're going to want to match up our insets with this endpoint. So let's scale it up a little bit first. Make it a little bit bigger and wider. And then move it up. There we go. And then we're going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this one left eye. And then we'll call this one mouth. And in order to change it, you just have to do the face region left eye. Okay, so now we just need to move this one. If you want to move it quicker, you can just hit the transform tool or the move tool up here, and then you can just, oops, I accidentally clicked that, and then you can just move that where you need it to. Duplicate that, call it right eye, and then again we need to change this face region to right eye. Okay, so now we have our end values of the sun and the face insets. So now we need to basically do the same thing with these, except we also need it to be in the correct layer. So we need to take all of these insets and move them just below the background and then above the suns. So then if you look here, they show up in the correct space. Okay, so now we need to create the tweens for this, and these are a little bit different from the tween billboard because they're a 3D object. They're going to be using the tween transform. So let's add 3 more tweens in here. And these are going to be tween transforms. Scene object is going to be the insets. So we have our left eye. Okay, and we're going to call this left eye. I'm going to set play automatically so that we can just kind of tell. And then let's check out those end values and add those to our tween transform. So the X value will stay the same. Y value is going to be the only one that changes. So that's what's going to be at the end. It's going to be -40 every time. And let's start this at, let's say, 10 just to see what happens. And then we're going to want it to start at the same time that these do, so with a delay of 3.5 and then with a time of 5. So delay 3.5, time 5. Okay, so now let's duplicate this, or copy this, paste it, and then we're going to do the same thing for the right eye. And let's check out what the right eye's X value is, since that'll be the only one that changes. Okay. And then rename this right eye. And then one more for the mouth. Okay, so this X value I'm guessing is 0, and then end Y value is 15. Okay, so let's test this out by adding these to the tween chain. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so now if we play automatically, let's see how we guessed. Okay, so those are definitely not where we need them to be. They need to be much lower. Let's try this again. We're gonna go here. Alright, that's good enough. Okay, so now we have all the animations that we need in this tween chain. So now we need to be able to call this tween chain. So let's uncheck the play automatically so that we can call it in the script. So we're going to create just a little count function here that will cycle through the two states. So I'm going to create a variable called count and set that equal to 0. And what we're going to want to do every time you tap is increment the count by 1. So we're just going to do count plus plus. That's a short way of saying the count equals count plus 1, essentially. So we're going to check if count equals 1. And that's what's going to be the first thing that happens because the count is incremented. So then this is what we're going to want to use to start the tweens. So let's go in here and then go to the start tween function, copy that, then we're going to go in here and then change it to script.tweens like we specified, and then we're going to want to name it tween chain just like we named it in the tween chain script. And we're going to also want to make sure that we have chain selected in the tweens that we're importing. So now it's going to call that tween chain. And then we're going to want to set the count back to a point where it will go back to 0 essentially. So we're going to want to set count to -1, because you have to remember every time we tap, the count goes up 1. So once you tap it, the count will go back to 0. And that's how we're going to create this waiting state. So if count equals 0, it's going to basically go back to what it looks like here in the preview. So we're going to want to stop the tweens where they are first using the stop tween function. And then add it here, tween chain, script.tweens. And then we're going to want to reset the values back to what they were initially. So that'll be all the way at the bottom here, reset object. What it does is it takes everything in the tween script and it resets those objects to the start values. So let's do that. We're going to stop it first and then reset with the same tween chain. So let's see if that works. So it moves the way we want it to, but then if we tap it again, it just puts them right back to where they were before. So what's happening here is I'm tapping it, the count's going, let's reset it, so the count's at 0 right now when it's initialized or when it starts. Then when we tap it, the count goes up 1, so then it'll check if the count's either 0 or 1, and in this case the count's going to be 1, so it's going to start those tweens, and then it's going to set the count to -1. So that's what's happening here. Then if we tap it again, the count's going to go up to 0, and it's going to stop the tweens and then reset them back to where they were before. And then we do it again, count goes up to 1 again, and then count's set back to -1. And we have our sunrise face lens here, and this can be used for any other kind of applications with the tweens. And this is a great way to animate stuff without having to really do complex animations, and it really just makes things a lot easier for you if you know how to use these simple functions that Lens Studio has built in. So that is our tutorial on how to make the sunrise face lens. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.